Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk about just some of my most anticipated games for fall 2016. Now, I say some because if I wanted to talk about all of them, I'd have to include the games from October and November. That's what I would consider fall releases. I made that list, I have that list, and it's kind of big. So I then thought to myself, why not make it a two-parter? So today we're going to talk about my most anticipated releases for October 2016, and sometime in the near future, we'll do a two-part, or the second part, which will be my most anticipated releases for November 2016. Now, before we actually get into the games that I'm looking forward to in October, we're actually going to talk about 3 games that are TBA. They do not have a release date, but I'm very hopeful that they will drop sometime this fall. If they want to be really nice and really let me play these games sooner rather than later, well then, in October, that would be fantastic. So let's start off with the first game on that list, which is Shadow Warrior 2 by Flying Wild Hog. Obviously the sequel to the reboot of the original first-person shooter franchise. The first game, Shadow Warrior, went over really well for just about everyone. Much like Wolfenstein and Doom, these are games that are incredible examples of what you can do when you bring back the classic shooter. And when you don't do too much different to it, other than make it really enjoyable, throw in some really fun comical bits in the case of Lo Wang and Shadow Warrior, and just make sure the gunplay is damn satisfying. Of course, there were swords, which totally helped in Shadow Warrior as well. And the melee in Shadow Warrior 2 is looking even more over the top. They're doing a procedural gore and damage system. They're also going kind of full-on RPG/RNG with weapons, so there's actually loot drops now. There's going to be 70 different weapons, all that can be then upgraded and infused. The game looks crazy. They're doing procedural generation for the levels, which means if you run halfway through a level and die and have to restart it, well then you'll get like a different level generated potentially. I really like the idea of that. I think it steps quite a bit away from what a lot of people expect when we talk about a sequel to a reboot of an original franchise. But maybe that's the point Flying Wild Hog's trying to make, is like, hey, we did the sort of like, you know, really honorable remake of the original. Now let us do our own thing. I'm okay with that. They're also throwing in 4-player co-op. 4-player co-op, procedural gore, Lo Wang, Shadow Warrior, Flying Wild Hog. You just can't really go wrong, can you? I'm really hoping that they can make a fantastic game. Some of the early stuff that we've seen looks pretty damn good. I'm just a little bit worried about the whole RPG loot drop type thing. You know, I guess at the end of the day, as long as the weapons feel great, they're fun to use, then I will be happy. But we will see whenever the game finally does release. I know they were talking about giving us an official date sometime in September. So hopefully once September rolls around, we'll have a better idea of when Shadow Warrior 2 is actually going to be coming out. Next up on that list is Below by Capybara Games. Capybara is a wonderful little indie studio that makes things like Super Time Force. They just make awesome games. I love everything that Capybara has ever done. And Below has been on their cooker for quite some time now. It's gone through several delays. It is primarily being worked on for Xbox One and PC. Microsoft did get sort of a setup and exclusivity with them. I'm very hopeful that it'll come out sometime this year. If it came out in October, I would be absolutely stoked. It's this, I mean, the game looks stunning from an art direction. They're using a tilt-shift style camera for the top-down perspective, which gives it a really unique feel and vibe. They are going to be doing randomly generated environments. It is considered a roguelike. You've got permadeath. They're really focusing on more difficult, challenging combat. Interestingly enough, Chris Piotrowski from Capybara has had this idea for a very long time. He actually says going back before the release of Demon's Souls, but they just didn't know that that type of a game was going to be popular, and it wasn't a risk for them to take as a small studio. So pretty cool. You know, when we look at what From Software has genuinely paved with the release of Demon's Souls and everything after that, you know, we now have these slew of games that were sitting there on the cooker that no one thought anyone would buy, and now here they are finally coming out. So really looking forward to Below. Total Biscuit actually did some great coverage of the game back at PAX East. I'll have his video linked down in the description below. Definitely check it out. I mean, the game looks stunning. Just everything about it, to me, just screams exactly what I want in an adventure game. It's got some Legend of Zelda vibes to it, like I said, with a push on more difficult roguelike gameplay. So really looking forward to that one. Definitely keep your eyes on it. Hopefully, we see it before the end of 2016. Last on this list is Cuphead by Studio MDHR. So this is the game that was very much being pushed by Microsoft with their indie department. It's this crazy side-scroller. It's going to be all like run-and-gun, action-oriented gameplay with some puzzle solving and platforming. But the kicker for this is how they're doing the presentation in art. So they're using 1930s style like cartoon visuals. So all hand-drawn and from ink. They're using those exact same processes. They're not just using a filter that makes it look like that. Legitimate watercolor backgrounds. They're going to be recording traditional jazz for it. I grew up watching a lot of old cartoons like this, actually. You know, reruns on the older Cartoon Network and stuff like that. Like this stuff just draws me in, and I can imagine that there's a huge, you know, generational gap, like, of different age groups that grew up watching these cartoons despite their original 1930 release. It's gonna have single player and 2-player co-op. You can play as Jughead or Mughead and Cuphead. Like I said, big push on puzzle solving, full screen bosses. It just looks like chaos. I almost thought it was like a bullet hell shooter when they first showed it off. It looks absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to get my hands on that. So those are the TBAs. Those games, as I said, do not have concrete release dates, but hopefully we'll see them this fall, or at least whenever they're ready. Not saying that they need to rush into development or anything. Just make sure they're great when they finally release. That's what really matters. Let's get into the legitimate list, though. Starting off on October 11th, we'll be seeing the release of Gears of War 4, of course, being developed by the Coalition. Rod Ferguson back at the helm after helping out with BioShock Infinite. You know, Black Tusk Studios forming into the Coalition. I'm a huge Gears fan. Anybody who's been around the channel long enough knows that. I love the Gears story, the characters. The continuation of Gears 3 is now finally here. We're going to be playing with JD Phoenix. Marcus is still alive. There's all these new characters. It's 25 years after the emulsion countermeasure was deployed, and it destroyed all the emulsion, the lambent, and the Locust over on Sarah, but now the planet's kind of in turmoil. It's dealing with all of these crazy storms. The weather effects are a huge part of the game's single player. And for you guys, you know, Phoenix and his group, you are now outsiders. So the COG has declared martial law, and anyone who exists outside of their boundaries is considered an outsider and, you know, essentially breaking the law, an outlaw. So that's your group now. And you're dealing now with the swarm. So this new threat that has arisen, that has come to sort of attack your somewhat peaceful existence as you ran raids on the COG for supplies. The game looks incredible. I was super excited for it. Obviously looking forward to the multiplayer. Just recently, though, they've shown off some very recent build footage of the game in terms of the multiplayer and single player. Like I said, we got to see old Marcus back in the fray. Loving the comedy. Loving, of course, to have John DiMaggio back on for the voice of Marcus. The DBs. So we got this crazy new faction that is connected to the Coalition. They're like these crazy robots. Who knows? My friends and I have a bunch of theories. Did Baird make them? Like, what's going on with that? Nonetheless, that was a really wonderful surprise. And then, most recently, we got to see the game's multiplayer, which is the first time we've seen it since the beta. It's been overhauled big time. The game looks far more stunning than it did in beta. 60 FPS, just beautiful, like fully utilizing the Unreal Engine. The game looks absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm a huge fan of Gears multiplayer, so I'm really excited for all the wonderfulness that is going to come with that. And of course, Horde Mode 3.0. Like, for me, Gears is one of the franchises that fully understands delivering a absolute complete package. They've done it across all of the games. As much as I didn't enjoy Judgment, it still delivered. It had so many game modes, so many different ways to experience the game, alone or with friends, and Gears 4 seems to be making that exact same push. So October 11th, I will be there. Let me know if you will as well. Moving on, we've got Battlefield 1 by DICE and EA. This is going to be releasing on October 21st. It's Battlefield 1. You guys know I'm already in love with the game's multiplayer, despite my sort of personal torment with its setting. It's obviously World War I with a focus on fun. I'm okay with that. I definitely am. You know, it's not Verdun. I accept that. I know a lot of people do. At the end of the day, I cannot deny how much fun I had with the game's alpha and multiplayer. It's obvious that this is the multiplayer experience that I've been looking for in Battlefield. It's super fun. I had an incredible time playing it with my brother, and I cannot wait to check out the open beta, which will be going live August 31st. So we're going to have plenty more opportunities to check the game out before its release come October 21st. Everyone's going to have a chance to give a go at the multiplayer and see what they think about it. It's obviously a beautiful game. It looks incredible. You know, I'm loving the locations that we get to go to because of this World War I setting. Really, the last bit of the puzzle for me is whether or not they can pull together a really great single-player experience. You know, I'm hoping that they leverage that World War I setting, throw in some historical bits, give us a reason to feel connected to the characters in the story, and, you know, give us a proper Battlefield single-player experience, one that we haven't had, in my opinion, in quite some time. Now, last on this list, and probably the one that I don't seem like I'm really excited for it. I'm trying not to be excited for it, but I know the week before this game's release, I will be there just like screaming like Titanfall 2, Titanfall 2. So yeah, Titanfall 2 by Respawn, coming out on October 28th. More Titanfall multiplayer. I loved Titanfall's multiplayer. I always just felt that they made a few bad decisions in terms of giving that community life and longevity. The biggest one being charging people for map DLC for a game that was, just kind of presenting itself to an audience. This was an original IP, no single player, so no real way to bring in a larger audience. And then you charge people for map DLC. It was not a smart decision, albeit at the time a decision that just about everyone was making. Fortunately, this time around, despite the game still being published by EA, Respawn is going to be delivering free map DLC, which to me is that's the kicker. Like, doesn't matter how great your multiplayer is, when you start splitting the community, unless you are a Titan like Battlefield, that's not something you can get away with. So super smart decision. A lot of fans are going to be really excited. That kind of gesture right there does a lot for a game. Like, I guarantee you they're going to sell more copies day one just because of that decision. So obviously I'm excited for the multiplayer. They're really big focus on a variety of Titans now. They're almost like operators in Rainbow Six Siege. We've got Titans with swords, Titan with ground pound abilities. Multiplayer looks cool. Did I mention there's a grappling hook? There's a grappling hook. That looks awesome as well. The big thing here, though, is finally giving people the single-player campaign they wanted. A lot of people saw the world and the universe of Titanfall, and they were like, this is incredible. Too bad we don't have anything to really tell us about it other than these shoehorned-in multiplayer campaign experiences. So now they're delivering a proper story. We're going to learn more about the universe. They're going with a buddy cop theme between a soldier and the AI inside of a Titan. That just sounds awesome. We haven't seen much of it, but I think they're already kind of set up for success. It's all about execution. I like the buddy cop theme. Titanfall, has some amazing combat gunplay, movement mechanics. Now they've got a grappling hook thrown into the mix. It's sci-fi. I'm all over that. Like, everything is there for me personally. It's just all about the execution and whether or not they can make that campaign more than a shooting gallery with a tiny bit of story tied into it. We will see come October 28th. They are planning on doing a technical test as well as a open beta before then. So keep an eye out for that stuff. Head over to their website and get informed as to whether or not you might be able to get into that and check out the game's multiplayer early. Now, I've got two more games to talk about that I've thrown into my honorable mentions section. So these are two games that I'm very excited for that have concrete release dates, but I just don't know if I'm going to have the time to play them. They got to kind of fit into the mix. Could I cover them on the channel? Can I afford them? Nonetheless, we're going to talk about them because I feel like they are games that are definitely worth your attention. Number one on the list is Mafia 3 by Hangar 13, coming out on October 7th. Yeah, October 7th. Huge fan of the Mafia franchise since the original on PC. Obviously, Mafia 2 took things in a whole new direction, continuing the open world elements, giving us a really deep story that I just felt so connected to. And it was a game that wasn't afraid to really highlight violence. I don't know anything about the mob scene, the crime scene, but I'd like to think that those dudes were pretty brutal. And Mafia 2 went out of its way to really showcase that. I think anybody who played the game will remember some very vivid and specific moments where certain people were killed in incredibly brutal ways to make a demonstration to you that things weren't going your way. Nonetheless, Mafia 3 seems to be continuing that tradition. Super brutal. The combat is focused around the new main character, who is this biracial Vietnam veteran. He's come out of Vietnam, like, whoa, what's going on to my hometown? And he's pretty much looking to take it back. So the combat focuses around his abilities as a combat vet. He is, melee, full use of firearms, on cover. It looks crazy. The combat looks crazy. But nonetheless, there's still all that wonderful story tied into the mix. The setting is 1968 New Bordeaux, or a reimagining of New Orleans. So we're going to have all that wonderful music from that time period, all the great cars from that time period. They're doing a huge focus on like really great, arcade sort of fun, high-speed driving, something that I felt Mafia 2 did reasonably well. It's cool to see them stepping that up. You're going to be able to run your own operation. You're going to be able to recruit people like Vito from Mafia 2. The game looks awesome. I really hope that I can find time to play it. I think, Mafia for the few games it's had, has delivered hardcore on each and every one. So hopefully they can do the exact same thing with Mafia 3. Last on my list, next on this honorable mentions list, is a very long-awaited game, and that is Last Guardian by Team Ico, looking to release, finally, after so many years, actually almost a decade, on October 25th. So, for those of you who don't know, the game's been in development since 2007. It's seen multiple delays. It's disappeared entirely. I actually have a Game Informer, I think from 2011, which was, you know, the game like came back and then disappeared. Like they talked about it and then it just vanished. But it's now officially coming out. Of course, Team Ico, the team behind Ico and Shadow of Colossus, will be taking on the role of a young boy who befriends a giant griffin-type creature. Do you really need to know any more than that? It's probably going to be a beautiful and stunning adventure game, just like Shadow of Colossus and Ico, and I really, really hope that I can make time to play it. If not, upon release sometime in December when I've got more time off during the holidays. So there you have it, guys. That is my list for my most anticipated games of October 2016. As I said, we'll be doing November 2016, wrapping up my anticipated games of the fall sometime in the near future. What I really want to hear from you guys at this point is your personal list of most anticipated games for October 2016. Share it with me down in the comment section below. Get some discussion flowing with everyone else. What games are you excited for? Why are you excited for them? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.